Hey gang, what's going on? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and much appreciated you guys making some time to watch the video. Definitely never take that for granted. Also, I'd like to invite everybody that hadn't had a chance to please subscribe to the channel, and like to ask everybody to help us reach 100,000 subscribers. We're sitting at 95,600 right now, so if I get the 60% of the people that aren't subscribed that are still watching the videos to subscribe, we'd be over 100,000 just in a couple days. So it'd be much appreciated, guys. Also, let me know. I don't know if you can see this, but I got a microphone here. A lot of you guys have been saying the audio was a little sketchy in the past, so I've got a microphone. Let me know if it helps out or not, or if it's just the other ways better. It's not sure on that. Anyway, guys, what we're going to talk about today, I have been getting a bunch of requests to do a video on sinking your own structure, brush piles, that type of stuff, and other type of stuff. There's more other stuff besides brush. So we're going to do a video on sinking your own bass structure. Here's the sort of the reality of the situation, guys. It's like so many lakes across the country, it is next to impossible to win a tournament unless you're fishing man-made brush piles. Obviously, a lot of guys live scope over them, but even before live scope, started to run fishing, it was still a big deal. Everybody was winning these tournaments off of man-made brush piles. If you come to Missouri, like Missouri or Oklahoma or anywhere like that, anywhere between, say, like the mid part of May and November, I'm going to guess that 95% of the tournaments are won off of some combination of man-made planted brush. So the point of the matter is, yes, it's very well worth your time to sink brush or other type of structure. And I've done this quite a bit in the past. I don't do it as much anymore, but back when I was young and full of the vigor of life, I did it quite a bit, in the different lakes across the country. And I used to actually plant brush in my practices for some of my tournaments before they made that illegal, because that's sort of another Randy Blockett rule that they took away from me about planting my own brush years ago. So anyway, before you get into this, one of the things you have to do is just make sure that it's legal in the state or the lake that you're fishing, that it's legal to place cover in a lake, because a lot of lakes it's not legal. I don't really understand it. Maybe it was for some safety reasons, but a lot of lakes, they don't allow you to do that. I do know a lot of people even go out in those lakes at night and plant their own brush piles. And that's what a lot of serious guys do, guys. A lot of serious anglers plant brush at night so they don't see other people doing them. And there are some guys that take this super serious. I know several guys that have bought old pontoon boats, bass fishermen, tournament guys, stripped everything off the pontoon boat where it's just a flat deck, and that's just their brush boat. They use it to plant brush all the time. So there's a couple different types of structures that you can plant. It's not just brush. Brush is one of them. Brush is the primary structure. You can also plant rock piles. You can build rock piles. You can make structure out of PVC piping. A lot of people make structures out of just whatever they have. It could be, old pallets. It could be old barrels. It could be anything like that. Anything that provides cover for a bass is considered, potential structure for that. But one of the things there's two things that I want to talk about as far as that gives you the most bang for your buck. First of all, if you're serious about planting structure in a lake, one of the best structures you can plant is rock piles. Now, rocks are harder to gather, but if you've got some type of source like for busted up concrete or, just riprap rock, if you make rock piles, they will last forever. You don't have to worry about them rotting away, and they are some excellent bass structures. I used to do this down at Grand Lake. What I would do is, like, every trip down there, I'd load up like a big tub full of rocks, and I'd go every trip I made, I'd dump this little tub, or actually, just a Tupperware tub, a big one like you get at Walmart. I'd dump that thing of rocks on my pile, and eventually, after 20 or 30 trips, I had a pretty good sized rock pile that produced a lot of fish. So if the lake that you have is set up for that, it's conducive to it, then that's a really good thing to do. Rock piles work best on lakes that are a little bit flatter, lakes that you have, like mud bottom, sand bottom, clay bottom, something that has not much natural rock structure. It's a really good thing to do. I'd highly recommend that that would be my number one choice, but it is very labor intensive. It takes a lot of time, a lot of work, and you sort of have to be close to the lake that you fish doing that. So the obvious thing is talk about brush, plant and man-made brush. There's a couple different considerations you have to do with this. The first thing, you have to consider the lake that you want to plant the brush in, how much water fluctuation that you have. Because like here in Missouri, we have like Bull Shoals Lake, it fluctuates 30 feet or so a year. Table Rock Lake may fluctuate, 15 feet. We have big fluctuations. So what you have to do, if you're serious about planting brush, you have to have brush at a lot of different levels. You can't just like plant it at 10 feet all over the lake. You got to have some brush that is in that 10-foot zone under normal conditions. You got to have brush that may be in 20 to 30 foot deep under normal conditions based upon your water visibility. Obviously, the clearer the water, the deeper you want to get your brush. So you got to have a variety as far as different type of depths, and you have to have a lot of brush piles. You can't go out there and say, I'm going to put in 5 or 6 brush piles and expect that to pay off for you. If you're serious about planning your own structure, it's an ongoing, never-ending process. Most guys that do that, most of these guys that win tournaments and spend a lot of dirt time doing it, they have hundreds of brush piles out there, and they're constantly having to replenish them because the brush will rot away eventually. It's like if you put a brush pile in, especially if the wood is not green, that brush pile in 2 years or so can be deteriorated to where it's not even much left out of there. So from that standpoint, it's a lot of work to maintain these brush piles. Now, the type of brush that you put in is all relative to what you have available. Don't go down and be cutting down live trees, guys. It doesn't hurt to if there's a big tree and there's like a one big limb on it or something and you want to make a smaller one, that's okay, but don't be cutting down these live trees. Concentrate on your dead trees that you find out there. And I have not found one type of tree that's better than another. It's all relative to how that limb and how the structure is planted in the lake, as far as where it's set up at. That's more important than the actual cover. One thing that you'll find is, stay away. I have not done that good around planting cedar trees and pine trees because it takes a long time for those pine needles to fall off unless they're dead. And the fish don't like to really use live pine needles that much. You can catch a few fish in it occasionally, but for the most part, you can catch fish on like pine trees and stuff that are overhanging, that have blown over a bankside that created a laydown. But as far as sinking them in deep water, I haven't done that good. So try to concentrate more on your hardwoods and your softwoods that are dead, that have some type of a limb structure. And most of the time, I weight them down with just whatever rocks on the bank. I'll just go down and get some type of some type of wire in a big roll that's easy to work with. Grab a few rocks, wire it off, and sink them like that. Another thing that I've done with plant and brush is, if you're wanting to take immediate advantage of it, one of the best ways you can do is find some willow trees. If you have willow trees or stuff like that on the water, and cut off a few branches off that willow tree, and maybe a branch that is big as your car hood. It doesn't have to be very big, and set it in really, really shallow water. Like set it in 2 to 3 feet of water, and break off. And a lot of times you'll see the limbs sticking out of the water. Break those limbs off at the water surface so nobody can see it. And I've done really good pitching and flipping the visual green willows that I've sunk just under the water. Even if the water's dirty, you can still see the leaves on there. That's one option there. Another thing, let's talk about where you want to plant them. The places that you do not want to plant brush, guys, are on any type of obvious structure like points. Do never ever stop. Don't even think about planting brush on points or in and around points. Number one, everybody else is going to find them. And number two, most of the time you ruin that spot. I can't tell you how many good main and secondary points in Missouri and Oklahoma that I used to catch a ton of fish on, that some guys come in there and they drop some brush piles on the points and the fish don't use them. If you have a point that has fish on it, keep it like that. Don't ruin it by putting brush on it. The places that you want to put brush on are the inobvious areas. I'm talking about bare banks that don't have much structure around it, that are inobvious, flatter banks in particular. Areas that the bass use as highways. For example, if you go back into a major creek, you can put some brush piles just on the main creek banks that are not close to the points. You can put some brush piles, like if you go back, back in the coves, like 2/3 of the way back in the cove, put some brush right in the middle of that cove, like in the gut of the cove. But try to put them in areas where people don't spend much time graphing on. And people graph around points all the time. So it doesn't, one of the things that I found about brush, it's like you can catch fish almost any area as long as you stay away from points. I mean, that's just been my experience with it. Another thing with that is, one of the realities of planting brush is that some brush just never holds fish. I don't know what it is about it, but I've planted some brush on some areas that I've caught fish on, like on bare banks and that type of stuff, inobvious type banks, and for whatever reason they just do not use it. There's something about the way brush is positioned, and it could have something to do with like the specific, the bottom composition where you put it in. I'm not sure what it is, but just realize that most of your brush piles are not going to hold fish. That's why you have to have a large number of them, because some they may use some at certain times of the year. They may use some at different water levels. But if you have a milk run of like 100 piles out there, chances are that you're going to run into enough fish to get a limit on any given day fishing brush like that. So anyway, guys, that's just a few tips with it. I personally do not like fishing it. I don't like having to, sort of rummage around and figure out where the brush is that I can't see. I would much rather be target fishing up on the bank. It's just a lot more fun. Usually fishing deeper brush is sort of a pain in the butt for boat positioning and getting your casts in there. So hope that helps out, guys. Hope that answered the questions for everybody that's been sending those inquiries in. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see y'all later.